I just obviously see him as dad, so it's not too strange for me. I think it was, I was kind of, when I was a young lad, I didn't really know what fame was, if you know what I mean. It was just kind of, that was my dad, and people liked asking him for photos or autographs for some reason, and I didn't know why. And obviously, as you get older, you start to realise everything. And yeah, look, I'm incredibly proud of my dad and my uncle, for what they achieved in their careers. And I think as I'm kind of growing into my career, it's, at times I do think about, when my dad was doing this, sometimes on the bus, to Scotland games, I think that my dad would have done that all these years ago. So yeah, it's quite a cool comparison. But I mean, think as a youngster, I didn't really, when I was growing up, I probably cared about it a bit more. I'd people would be saying, "Oh, you're only playing because your dad," and things like that, and then your mates would start getting into you.
Yeah, so how's it been then? So in-house games, how's it been for you actually? Let's just go back. How's it been for you personally the last few weeks? Being a young lad, the chats that I've had along the way with a lot of the guys on this kind of show that I do for RugbyPass, that's one of the questions you ask, right? Because it's very different for me. I'm retired, I've got 4 kids at home, but you're in the prime of your life, you've just come off the back of the Six Nations and then there's nothing, right? So how have you dealt with it apart from playing FIFA? I saw you doing a bit of DJing as well.
Mate, that's what it's come to, putting out crap videos like that. That's what I mean. Like, you'd never have got that before, but boredom was hitting hard during, the middle of lockdown. So I think boys were finding anything and everything to get up to. But yeah, no, look, it's been a strange one. I mean, as for most people, obviously during lockdown, it was bizarre. It was just so long and no one knew what was going on. But yeah, past few weeks, it's been good to get back in with the boys. Like, it's just mentally just so refreshing seeing people every day and, training again. So, yeah, it's been good fun. And the weeks have come around quick, to be fair. I mean, we were, 8 weeks ago, we were back at Murrayfield, kind of in the bubble, they called it. So we were just kind of running in our lanes on the pitch and had our own gym base. But now we're back in full team training. You get to hug everyone again, which is good, but no showering yet. So we'll see.
No showering, straight home?
No, we're showering after the game, actually. So, yeah, but none of that, nothing's been allowed so far. So it's all still very strict.
Yeah, of course. And then, like you personally keeping in shape, I always wonder this. I mean, it's very different, isn't it, for a prop or, anyone in the forwards, I suppose. You've just got to keep your size on and stay fit. But we're someone with an array of skill set, where you're not allowed out the flat. I don't know if you've got a 5-acre farm where you can be drop goaling and stuff like that. But how did you keep your skill set sharp and stuff like that, especially in the early days where you take a bit of time off completely?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like first however many weeks in lockdown, I think I pretty much just sat on the couch and shoved food into my mouth. So, but that was good fun, to be fair. I think I needed it. It'd been a long time since I'd had a week off or whatever, but after about 2 or 3 weeks of that, I think the majority of the nation might have done that, to be honest. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, everyone realised that exercise is actually quite good for you. So, yeah. So, and then when it kind of chilled out a little bit, I was able to kind of get up to west of Scotland. The pitches there, so I had a bag of balls, so I could do a bit of kicking, a bit of passing. But yeah, that was it. Maybe 2-3 times a week I'd go up there and do that. But that was the thing, it was just stuff to fill up your day anyway, so it wasn't too boring.
Mate, let's go back to March and probably a little bit into February as well. Like, it was crazy. It feels bloody years ago, doesn't it, that we actually saw any competitive rugby. Obviously the internationals were on, but it must have been a strange time for you, right? Maybe not strange, but I was trying to think back to that time before we were obviously doing the interview, what it must have been like for you playing for Scotland, right? Around the whole Finn Russell situation, the headlines that were coming out of that. And all the time that was going on, I was talking about Finn and everyone was talking about Finn. I didn't really think about you, right? Until after, and then until now, and thinking, I wonder how Adam dealt with that and everything that went around that and the pressure and everything externally, right? Regardless, I'm sure you say, right, you try and get away from it, you try not to look at it, you try not to read it, but when you play for Scotland, it's a big deal, especially in Scotland. How was that for you?
Yeah, no, look, it was, I think, I found out maybe 2 weeks before the Ireland game that, or when it obviously happened, that was going to be the case. And Gregor just kind of said to me I'd be starting. So I kind of had a bit of time to think about it before obviously everyone else knew, which was good. But yeah, look, I think maybe before the Ireland game, I felt a bit of pressure, obviously, because it was all the kind of media we're talking about. But obviously within camp, it wasn't as big a deal. It was just kind of dealt with in the first couple of days, and then boys had to move on and just focus on the game. So for me personally, I just deleted Twitter and things like that, because you know how you get a few armchair critics on that coming at you. So I just tried to stay away from that. But I think maybe the biggest thing was I'd almost kind of gone through that a tiny bit when Finn left for Racing. And it was kind of that big question mark of who's going to fill this role here. So I suppose I'd had a tiny bit of that before. But yeah, look, before the Ireland game, I maybe felt a bit more pressure than usual. But I think after that, things settled down a bit and I was able to just kind of relax.
You say you mentioned you deleted Twitter. Was that because this was happening, or was that kind of something that you were going to do anyway?
Yeah, I think probably because that was happening. I'd done it a couple of times before in my career. I think I kind of had a dip in form in my breakthrough year, as you'd call it. And yeah, I was taking a bit of a hammering, and as a young lad, you tend to read all these things. So yeah, I just didn't want to kind of put myself on that boat again, because it can be a bit toxic, and it's almost just a bit of a downward spiral, because then you start reading everything, and boys say it's not the 9 good comments you remember, it's the one bad one. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of get away from it all. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't re-download it a couple of weeks later, yeah, to see what was going on.
No, absolutely, mate. This is it, isn't it? And again, like the social media stuff only came into it at the back end of my career, mate. I was scotsman.com/rugby, mate, just getting on the comments there, getting absolutely rinsed every week. When you look back on them games, right, and you played really well and you deserved the place, and Finn's it's not going to be tough for him to get back in. I mean, you're both on a level par. You both play very similarly. But have you thought back on your performance? I know it's a long time ago. We want to look forward to these games and stuff, but I think it's good to look back. Like the win against France, and then go into the game against Wales that's going to be replayed. Much reflection on them?
Yeah, I think obviously because we had that lockdown, is a long layoff, so yeah, there was loads of time to think about it. But yeah, probably just, I mean, the whole thing was just a really good learning curve for me. Obviously I'd felt like I could, be in that role before, and I'd always wanted to be, as a starting 10. So it was just nice to kind of showcase what I could do. It wasn't all perfect, Italy, I played pretty poor, wasn't functioning with the boot, but I think it was really nice to kind of end on that France game where I thought I played half decent. So, it was obviously a bit of a shame that we couldn't play Wales, because I think, we just hit our straps then in that France game, and it would have been interesting to see how things would have gone down in Cardiff.
Being a Hastings, right, I can't think of many other people called Hastings. When I think of Hastings, we obviously think about your dad and a little bit about your uncle as well. What's it like having Gavin as your dad? I know it's a weird question to ask, right, but you think about famous rugby players around the world, and Gavin would be, up there in the top 5-10, right? In years gone by. In Scotland, he's one of the most famous human beings as well. How's that as a young lad? I mean, I chat to my son. He thinks I'm famous because I had 3 people basically said hello to me on the street. So he thinks he's feeling potentially what you might have felt, but obviously not. But how is that, having, also your dad being Gavin, but the profile and the expectation, because, his career and whatever. I just want to know what's that like for you, and what kind of advice he gives you being in the position that you're in.
I mean, I just obviously see him as dad, so it's not too strange for me. I think it was, I was kind of, when I was a young lad, I didn't really know what fame was, if you know what I mean. It was just kind of, that was my dad, and people liked asking him for photos or autographs for some reason, and I didn't know why. And obviously, as you get older, you start to realise everything. And yeah, look, I'm incredibly proud of my dad and my uncle, for what they achieved in their careers. And I think as I'm kind of growing into my career, it's, at times I do think about, when my dad was doing this, sometimes on the bus, to Scotland games, I think that my dad would have done that all these years ago. So yeah, it's quite a cool comparison. But I mean, think as a youngster, I didn't really, when I was growing up, I probably cared about it a bit more. I'd people would be saying, "Oh, you're only playing because your dad," and things like that, and then your mates would start getting into you as well. So, but yeah, I think you hit an age maybe late teens or whatever, where you realise coaches aren't gonna pick you because of your bloodline. So and look at as I've gotten older, I've probably started to appreciate what my dad did in his career more. And so again, extremely proud of him.
Not just the stuff that happened in the Six Nations before, but the early start of your career when you were at Glasgow, when you were down at Bath before. What kind of advice does he give you? Naturally as a dad, but to try and make it at the top level. Does he give you any, or does he stay quiet?
I don't think he gave me too much rugby advice, because I don't think they knew what they were bloody doing back in the day. They were putting on some of these replays during lockdown of the 1995 World Cup or whatever. It was crap. And I don't know, he used to say he was good. It was honestly awful. So I don't know, he can't give me advice there. But look, I think he's pretty chilled out, to be fair to him. He's just usually a couple of things, enjoy yourself, play well, things like that. It's never really, why'd you kick that there, or what are you doing here? It's just pretty much enjoy yourself. And he said, if you're not enjoying yourself, then what's the point? So,
So enjoying yourself, that's the one.
Enjoy yourself, yeah, exactly.
Mate, I'll tell you what, I bet they had a great time back in the day when they were winning things as well. So who do you look at the leading lights, right? Because Scotland now, we're very competitive. Glasgow, Edinburgh as well, very competitive as well. But when you look at the fly halves out there and you think, fuck, he's a good player. I'd love to be like that. Is there anyone that you look at and you think, they've got the ultimate game?
That's a tough one. I think, growing up, obviously, you like all these lads with, top-notch highlight reels. So like your Quade Coopers, your James O'Connors, people like them. And I think probably when I was younger, I probably tried to be too much like them. I'd be hogging the ball and throwing dummies and things like that, which I still do now, to be fair. Sam Johnson gets into me from time to time because he doesn't get the ball ever. But look, I think as a youngster, you obviously look up to people, but I think as I've gotten a bit older, you start to realise your own strengths and your own weaknesses and what you need to improve on and things like that. So I think I've probably just tried to develop my own game and not look too much at others. But if there's one, Owen Farrell's a pretty well-round, polished 10, and just in terms of game driving, I had the pleasure of obviously working behind Reece Priestland at Bath and George Ford, who are both quality individuals. So probably your Reeces or your Georges, to them.
It's interesting you say that, because I'd say, I suppose George Ford, there's some comparables and stuff like that, but Owen, I would say, is a slightly safer player. Do you know what I mean? And maybe that's why he's saying it, because he's got that kick in. I played with Owen, very different character as well to yourself, I think. But he plays, very different, I'd say. He's more kind of calculated in his kicking game. Is that something that you're looking to kind of work on? Because we've all seen, the bag of tricks that you've got, your show and goes, the exciting style of rugby that you obviously want to play. Is your evolution, do you think, maybe more of that kicking game? And I say more of that kicking game as if you can't kick, and it's obviously more than that. But having that option in there, because, Glasgow and under Gregor, it's all about playing. That's what it is. You're kind of forced to do that. But from the outside looking in, it seems like there needs to be a little bit more of the boring stuff that, maybe the fans don't want to see. Is that a conscious thing for you then? Yeah,
definitely. I think, especially as a younger player, you've kind of got that kid inside you that just wants to have the ball in your hands. And, especially, as a slightly smaller man on the field, you don't really want to be defending too much. I think, it's definitely something I've thought about, as you mentioned, in teams I've played with in the past, it's been very much attack oriented and holding on to the ball. I think, over the past few years, personally as well, I've gotten much better at that. But I think it is about just, nailing down every part of that game. And if you've got that kind of conservative side mixed with that, that running ability and things like that, then that's, pretty decent.
No, absolutely. We'll talk about Glasgow. A few changes. Danny Wilson's obviously now at the helm. Johnny Bell from Gloucester comes with great credentials. I know him as well. My good mate Kelly Brown, who was over at the house earlier, asking me how Glasgow play, because he doesn't know yet. So I've had to tell him off the research that I've done. But slightly smaller squad as well. But I mean, it is a crazy time. But how excited are you under the kind of new regime? Obviously, rugby's back, but I suppose like a new look. Dave Rennie's moved on. There's been some subtle changes in the team as well. Yeah, no, massively. I think it's a very exciting time to
to be a Warriors player. You know, obviously we've signed Big Nax as well, which is, you know, very exciting as well. So Danny's been brilliant coming in. He's kind of brought a new edge to us. A couple different things we can change about our game plan, which I think will help massively as well. And you know, even Johnny Bell as well. You know, he's obviously done great things with Gloucester, but I really like some of the stuff he's brought in, and he's a top bloke as well. So yeah, excited to get going.
And then personally, like ambitions, I know it could be seen as a throwaway question. I know the season's just started and it's going to be a bit bitty probably for the next few months, but any personal ambitions? Have you thought that far ahead? Have you said to yourself, right, you know, this is how I want things to look when we're back up and running fully?
I mean, yeah, you always want to win some silverware. I mean, that final that we lost at Glasgow, you know, against Leinster still stings. I actually hate thinking about it. I don't think I've watched the game back either. I just can't bring myself to do it. So yeah, I'd love to win some silverware. I just feel like we've got too good a group of players to not win something. And I mean, that starts with the Gravy Bowl this weekend. So we could potentially pick that up tomorrow. But yeah, looking forward, I think it'd be great to win the Pro 14 next year, and then yeah, hopefully do similar with Scotland.
Absolutely. And so what I do sometimes before I do interviews with some of the lads is I'll text a few mates and say, have you got any questions that I can put forward? 3 of my mates came back and said, can you ask him why his teeth are so white? Are they real?
They're real, mate. I've got chips all over them. Just brush 3 times a day, mate. That's 3
times? I can't even show mine, mate. I like too much coffee and red wine, mate, so they're like very yellow compared to yours. So brush 3 times a day, mate. I've never heard that. I've always got told 2.
Yeah, well, I mean, my dad brushes his 3 times a day, but his are a bit yellow, so I'm not sure if he's using water from the toilet or whatever. But, yeah, out the tap, I'd recommend.